Hello, good day. It's beautiful Tuesday, yeah, and it's the last Tuesday of the month of May. Thank you very much for staying with us. This is episode 6 of the Science and Sustainability of Systems, and I am your host, Olamileko Neniola. So, the last episode we discussed quite a number of things. We discussed going about the feedback loops, and we also looked at how families integrate structurally into the science of systems. We've been able to look into how family serves as stabilizers and also reinforcers of whatever is going on in the whole system. So today's episode, we're going to be looking at information and feedback systems. So let's start with an analogy. Yeah, let's look at other time as a blindfolded driver. Imagine driving from Lagos, Nigeria to Accra, Ghana at night with a broken dashboard. No fuel gauge, no speedometer, no engine warning light, no maps, no mirrors. Now imagine pressing harder on the accelerators because the engine sounds fine. That is how many organizations, governments, businesses, and even families operate. We are just sustaining momentum, we are moving with no sense of direction or visibility, and as such they are just moving without visibility. The scary thing about systems is this: a system can survive being inefficient for a while, it can survive being slow, it can even survive bad leadership temporarily, because a system that loses accurate feedback eventually loses reality itself. Because systems do not respond to truth, they respond to the information available inside them. And when the information is delayed, distorted, manipulated, incomplete, or invisible, the system begins to make decisions disconnected from the reality. That is when collapse quietly begins. So today's episode, we're looking at information. Information not just as data, not just as KPIs or tracks, but information as the nervous system of every functioning structure. Today we are discussing how systems learn. We are discussing how systems self-correct. We are discussing why a measurement changes behavior, why some institutions improve over time while others decay despite effort. And perhaps most importantly, why what a system chooses to measure eventually becomes what the system optimizes for. So, this is episode 6: Information and Feedback Systems. What a system measures, it becomes. So, let's start from the beginning. What information actually does in a system? What's it? What is the reason why we track data? What is the reason why we source information within a system? In systems thinking, information is not decoration, it is regulation. Feedbacks tells a system whether its behavior is producing stability or instability. Without feedback, systems drift. Think about the human body. Your body constantly measures temperature, blood sugar, hydration, oxygen levels, blood pressure. The body survives because it continuously receives feedback about itself. Imagine, let's say if your body can no longer detect pain, you may feel comfortable temporarily, but the absence of pain would not mean the absence of damage. To simply mean that the system has lost visibility into its own condition. And this is the reality of many institutions, many structures, many systems, because they are not failing because nobody is working. They are failing because the system cannot accurately see itself. So that brings us to the subtitle of today's episode, which is said, what a system measures, it becomes. So one of the dangerous truths in organizational science is this: measurement changes behavior. The moment the metrics becomes important, people start reorganizing themselves around it. If a school only measures examination scores, teachers begin teaching for tests rather than understanding. If a company only measures quarterly profit, long-term innovations begin to die. If a government only measures GDP growth, inequality, social cohesion, and institutional trust will quietly collapse beneath the numbers. This is known in economics and systems theory through principles like Goodhart's law, Campbell's law, and performance feedback theory. The Goodhart's law famously states that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. I'll take that again. It said, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. Because people optimize for what is rewarded. And this explains why many systems accidentally create the exact behaviors they claim to oppose. Let's take for examples. A police system measured only by arrests may encourage unnecessary arrests. A hospital measured only by speed may reduce quality of care. A workplace measured only by productivity may quietly destroy employee well-being. I would really a story I saw, yeah. So there was an institution, I would not really mention the name of the institution, but the institution, a university setting, yes. But they now task the lecturers. They there's a stipend that comes with when you catch a student cheating in an exam hall. Over time, the reality of that institutions or the lecturers became the fact that they were no longer interested in monitoring the success or making sure the exams go smoothly. The intent of going or invigilating any examination is to find a way to catch a student cheating. Even when such student is not cheating, they tend to create scenarios as such that they hold the student responsible for an action. So many a times, and that brings us to the Goodhart's law that states that when measure becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measure. Because now that was like the goal, that was the target they take into the exam hall. Let's say if I'm able to get 2 or 3 students cheating today, then I should be able to get a particular amount of money from the management. And this is what we were trying to avoid, because the goal, first off, of the system is to avoid students cheating. Now, over time, because of the measure, because of what the system measures, it's now become a way for what is actually is creating what is actually created, what is actually put up for to oppose. So this is what we're saying. The metric becomes the culture. The scoreboards becomes the strategy. Now let's take another example. Let's take a look at the university scoreboard trap. Let's take universities globally now, aside the one I singled out earlier. Originally, universities exist to cultivate knowledge, critical thinking, innovation, and scholarship. But once global ranking became dominant, many institutions began optimizing for ranking metrics rather than educational quality itself. Suddenly, citation count mattered more than the teaching quality, publication volume mattered more than the intellectual depth, and institutional branding mattered more than the local impact. The metrics became the mission, and slowly education itself became performative. The systems was no longer producing knowledge efficiently, it was producing appearance of excellence. This is a very solid point, or a very solid example to further show that when the measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Another example to want to look into at our current times will be social media and algorithm reinforcement. Now let's move into digital world. Social media platforms measure engagement, clicks, watch time, reactions. And at first, at the beginning, it seems reasonable. Platforms simply want to know what the users enjoy. But systems react to incentives. Once creators realize outrage generates more engagement than nuance, The systems begins rewarding emotional extremity. The algorithm then amplifies the most emotionally stimulating content. Users respond to that stimulation. The algorithm detects the response, then amplifies it further. This is an example of a reinforcing loop. And eventually, the systems become incapable of distinguishing attention from the truth, virality from value, and engagement from well being. The metrics quietly reshape the culture. People are now going to social media, they're going extreme, and the goal is to source for clicks, engagement. And we realize that this is like diverting, or this is pulling away from the actual intent of putting such metrics in place. And the last one we'll be touching on this will be the GDP illusion, because even entire nations' economies fall into this trap. For decades, nations treated GDP growth as the ultimate measure of progress. Yes, agreed. GDP is useful. GDP is very useful. But GDP measures production, not necessarily well-being. A country can increase or maintain its GDP while mental health deteriorates, inequality widens, environmental systems collapse, trust erodes, and family structures weaken. If the metric only measures economic output, then the system eventually sacrifices everything else to maximize the output. And this is one of the greatest systems mistakes of modern civilization, confusing economic expansion with societal development. So what are we saying? This is what we are saying at Amogit. At Amogit, we're saying every metrics creates a behavior. So the question is never simply what are you measuring? The deeper question to be asked is what kind of human behavior is this measurement system engineering over time? Because systems do not merely measure or reward outcomes, they shape cultures, they shape thought processes. So, speaking of systems and measurement, also we're going to be looking at another important factor in systems thinking. So, today's another thing we'll be looking at is called stocks and flows, the hidden structure beneath performance. To understand information systems deeply, we must discuss one of the most important concepts in system science, that is stocks and flow. Because many people confuse activity with progress. A stock is what accumulates over time. A flow is the movement that increases or decreases the stock. So let's simplify this. A more relatable example would be a water tank. So the water inside the tank is the stock. The water entering or leaving the tank is the flow. Another example would be your bank account. Money in your bank account, money in your savings is the stock, while the money entering or leaving your account is the flow. So these are examples of how to better understand stock and flow. Another one to look at is public trust. So public trust is a stock, is already there. Then daily institutional behavior is the flow. Knowledge inside the society is a stock, while education, mentorship, and information transfer are flows. Now, here is where the issue often comes up. We mostly obsess over flows while ignoring stocks. Let's take, for example, a company may increase sales aggressively, and that is flow. But if employee trust, culture, institutional credibility are deteriorating underneath, then the stock is collapsing, and eventually the flow becomes unsustainable. That is why some economies appear strong shortly before crisis. The visible flows looks healthy, but the invisible stocks are empty. Social trust declines, institutional legitimacy weakens, human capital erodes, family cohesion deteriorates, information decays silently, and these are the stocks that most often we do not pay attention to. So the surface appears stable while the reservoir underneath dries up. Let's take examples to further enrich the conversations on stocks and flows. A case study will be 2008 financial crisis. Before the 2008 financial crisis, many financial institutions looked successful. Profits were high, markets were booming, credits were flowing, the visible metrics looked excellent. But the information system was distorted, risk was hidden, debt exposure was poorly understood, short term gains were rewarded more than long term resilience. The system optimized for immediate profitability while quietly draining the stock of systemic stability. And because of this, the feedback mechanisms were delayed and therefore the collapse appeared sudden. But it was not sudden. There were warning signals that existed years earlier. The system simply chose not to measure what mattered because attention were not paid to the stock. Rather, more interest were given to the flows. So we're going to take a break here, and in the course of this conversation, we're trying to look at information and feedback systems. We started by with the analogy of the blindfolded driver, then we moved into how information actually operates in a system. Then we looked at how what a system measures actually shapes what the system becomes. We gave a series of examples, and lastly, we talked about stocks and flows. In the conversation with stocks and flow, we have ended with another case study utilizing the 2008 financial crisis. This is Amogate Radio Communication, and I'm your host, Olamileko Eniola. Thank you for staying with us, and after the break, we'll be back to pick up our conversations and would now get to discuss information delays and why systems react too late. Thank you.
At Armor Gates Training, we believe professional development should do more than inform. It should transform how people work, lead, and deliver results. That's why we support organizations through conceptual insight, practical learning, and performance evaluation right at the intersection of leadership, strategy, and institutional transformation. Our approach focuses on practical learning format that professionals can immediately apply in their workplace. At Armor Gate, we don't teach theory alone. We equip participants with real-world insight drawn from almost 2 decades of organizational transformation experience. Our programs combine multiple learning methods designed for real-time measurable results. Through seminars, we facilitate deep conversation on key subjects. Using group exercises, participants collaborate, reflect, and think strategically. With case studies, they then sharpened analytical and decision-making skills using real industry scenarios. Through relevant videos, we spark insightful discussions using relatable real-life context. All in all, every participant develops an individual work plan, ensuring the learning turns into real action after the program. Our training programs are hosted in world-class venues across global cities, including Addis Ababa, Nairobi, Mombasa, Cape Town, Dubai, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, London, Florida, and Washington, D.C. Let's work with you to turn learning into your organization's growth. For more inquiries, call +234 807 9574 151 or WhatsApp +1 610 504 6026. Visit www.thearmorgate.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Armorgate. Armorgate Training, transforming knowledge, interaction, and growth.
Welcome back. This is the science and sustainability of systems. This is episode 6, and in the course of the previous 5 episodes, we have been able to look into different topics that pertains to the science and sustainability of systems. And in the first part of this conversation, we started by discussing the importance of information to sustenance of systems, and also we took a look rather into how why information are actually very important to systems. Then we also discussed stocks and flows. So still speaking about information, today we'll continue with information delays. So one of the most scary dynamics in systems is delayed feedbacks. Sometimes systems receive information too slowly to correct themselves effectively. A government may not realize educational collapse until unemployment rises years later. A family may not notice an emotional breakdown until conflict becomes irreversible. A company may ignore toxic culture until mass resignations begin. Now, by the time these visible systems appears, the structural damage has already accumulated. And that is why sustainable systems build early warning mechanisms. The best systems do not wait for collapse before adjustment, they detect weak signals early. Now, how do we then now approach this conversation in the digital age? Because the issue that comes with digital age is the fact that systems can no longer distinguish signals from noise. One of the defining crises of the 21st century is not lack of information. Majorly, we often deal with information overload. Human beings are evolved to process limited streams of information. But today, our systems are flooded continuously. Notifications, headlines, opinions, statistics, propaganda, AI generated content, algorithmic recommendations. So the modern crisis is no longer scarcity. Now we are dealing with filtrations, that is, information overload or filtering of actual needed content. We are unable to detect between noise and actual signals. So let's break them down. What are signals? What are noise? In system theory, a healthy system depends on its ability to distinguish meaningful signals from irrelevant noise. If a pilot receives too many conflicting alerts simultaneously, the cockpit becomes dangerous. If policymakers receive distorted economic data, they respond incorrectly. If organizations suppresses negative feedbacks, they become blind to emerging threats. If societies can no longer agree on basic facts, collective coordinations begin to collapse. Now, what then is needed to do? What we will now move into is what we term as the attention economy. The digital economy monetizes attention, which means platforms are incentivized not to inform you but to retain you. The result is profound. Algorithms learn what emotionally activates people: fear, anger, tribalism, controversy, outrage. And because emotionally charged information spreads faster, systems increasingly prioritize stimulation over accuracy. This creates what the system theories call a positive feedback spiral. The more extreme the content, the greater the engagement. The greater the engagement, the more the algorithm amplifies it. Over time, society becomes informationally fragmented. Now, as a result of this information fragmentation in the society, then what are the institutional consequences? So this affects the institutions deeply. Democracies require more shared informational reality. Markets require informational trust. Organizations require honest reporting. Once information systems becomes polluted, decision quality collapses, trust deteriorates, polarization intensifies, and coordination weakens. And when systems begin reacting emotionally instead of strategically, it then becomes a problem. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, now introduces a new systems challenge: a synthetic information. We are now in an era where images can be fabricated, voices replicated, videos manipulated, narratives mass produced automatically. Which means future systems resilience will depend not only on access to information but on verification capacity. The strongest institutions tomorrow will not necessarily be those with most data. They will be those with the best systems for validating the truth. And then again, the family becomes critical because family can act as an information filter. For healthy family systems historically acted as interpretive frameworks. They transmitted values, moral judgment, critical reasoning, cultural memory. Families help younger generations filter reality. But when the family system weaken, information increasingly outsource meaning making entirely to algorithms. And algorithms do not raise citizens. Algorithms only optimize engagement. How then can we now utilize families as a way out? So healthy families continuously exchange feedbacks, emotional feedback, behavioral feedback, financial feedback, moral feedback, and relational feedbacks. Parents observe behavioral shifts. Children learn through response patterns. Values are reinforced through repeated communications. This creates self-correction, but when communication collapses, the feedback weakens. And when the feedback weakens, misunderstandings compound. Silence becomes informational blindness. One of the major insights on research from the research on family and social resilience was that resilient families do not survive because they avoid pressure, but because they maintain adaptive feedback structures during the pressures. They communicate, they distribute responsibility, they reorganize support, they detect strength early. The family becomes the society's smallest learning system. So, how then can we move to to move back to the institutions we've been dealing with? Institutional blindness and the collapse of adaptability. So many institutions fail because those at the helm of affairs confuse authority with awareness. People at the top often receive filtered information. Bad news moves slowly upward. Fear suppresses honest reporting. Metrics become manipulated to preserve appearances. And eventually, leaderships begin managing illusions instead of realities. This is how systems decay internally while appearing stable outside. At Amogate, one of our strongest principles is this: a system's adaptability. A system's adaptability depends on the quality of its feedback architecture, not merely leadership intelligence, because even brilliant leaders become dangerous inside blind systems because you can only enforce what you have the full information on. So what are we saying at Amogate? At Amogate was saying, let us start designing systems that learn. At Amogate, we believe sustainable systems must possess four informational capacities, and the first of which is visibility. The systems must accurately see itself. After ensuring that visibility is sorted, the next one will be transparency. Information must flow within the system without distortion. The third one is responsiveness. Feedback must trigger adjustment quickly enough. You don't just know because you want to know, you know because you want to act. And lastly is memory. A system must learn from previous outcomes instead of repeating failures endlessly. This is what separates adaptive systems from fragile ones. Fragile systems hide information, adaptive systems absorb it. Fragile system punish feedback, adaptive system reward learning. So what are we saying? To build systems that survive. As we wrap up episode 6, remember this: systems do not become sustainable accidentally. Rather, they survive because they continuously learn, and learning requires feedback. If a system cannot measure reality accurately, it cannot respond intelligently. If it cannot respond intelligently, it cannot adapt. And systems that cannot adapt eventually collapse under pressure they fail to detect early enough. These organizations, the societies, the families that endure are not the ones that avoid difficulties. They are the ones that remain visible to themselves while moving through the difficulties. So in next episode, we're going to be discussing complexity and emergence of systems. I am Olamilekon Niniola, and this is the science and sustainability of systems. And remember, people do not just respond to leadership. They do not only respond to leadership, they respond to measurement also. See you in the next episode of Science and Sustainability of Systems. This is Almogate Radio Communications. Ensure you follow us across all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Almogate Radio, Almogate Consult. Thank you very much for staying with us. Have a productive week.
Almogate, founded in 2008 out of a desire to build transgenerational structures for organizations, institutions, and nations. We have worked with large businesses, international development organizations, and public sector ministries and agencies. Almogate, our uniqueness is that we do not just work for you, we work with you. For example, we do not leave you to the task after sourcing talent that will help the new hire settle into robust leadership development programs. We are technical experts in advising and supporting institutions on strategy and leadership, artificial intelligence, strategic human resource management, public sector reform, finance, audit and tax, FAT, and strategic communications. We do all this and more out of a desire to transform nations through institutions and organizations. For further inquiries, email contact@thealmogate.org or call +234 810 999 6666, +234 807 957 4151, and +161 0504 6026. www.thealmogate.org. Almogate, building to endure and transforming nations through institutions and organizations.